Right, 5 seconds it should be recording. All right. Jack Frost, Part 2. Adam looked at Dr. Martin as if to give him the first response. The older man buttered another piece of cornbread and spoke. To be honest, no one seems to be very sure what's going to happen this winter, or the following winters for that matter. Adam, your wife and I were part of a group from the university that participated in a teleconference this week for agricultural specialists put on by NOAA, NASA, and the Geological Survey. He took a swallow of his coffee and continued. Mind you, this isn't my field, but if Adam or Ann will correct any of my errors, what they told us is this. They expect the temperature of agricultural zones. They expect the temperate agricultural zones of at least the northern hemisphere to shift further to the south. It's not clear yet how large of a shift is coming, but judging from the weather we've received already, it's going to be fairly large, at least for this winter. I wouldn't be surprised if the state's citrus belt and other semi-tropical plantings don't end up moving as far south as Miami, maybe even out of Florida altogether. We've already lost an average of our last 30 days of growing season here, which caught a good deal of fruit still on the trees. They've been trying to harvest the last of the wheat and corn crops in the northern grain belt states in blowing snow. With the tremendous amount of late season rain followed by chronic fuel shortages for agricultural use, the late hay cuttings were largely lost. This is partially offset by the drawdown in the national livestock population to go to immediate food needs. Efforts are being made to bring in more feed and forage from the Midwest, and it has been arriving steadily for the last several weeks, which will allow those caught unprepared to at least keep their breeding stock alive. John nodded and said to his father, We ought to investigate that. Near as I can tell, the feed and hay we got from Ed for the cow will run out in late March. If it stays cold longer than normal next year, we're not going to have enough for her, and maybe not the goats either. The forage men said that might be a good thing because the long-range weather specialists are telling us from the preliminary data they're getting now that we may get frost until late March, maybe even into May, which puts it a good month or more past our usual frost date. Better be ready for sticker shock when you see the prices, though. I imagine any halfway decent hay will go for more than $10 a bale, a square bale, even with government price controls. That's right now. By midwinter, you probably won't find any for sale at all. John Winston shook his head. Well, that certainly hurt. I'll check it out first thing on Monday. Maybe I can talk Ed out of a bit more of his. We'll just have to get all the mileage we can out of winter grazing if we can't come up with more forage. Surely at least the rye will grow some more. Robert asked, How low do you think we'll get this year, and will it be the same next year? Dr. Martin said, It's hard to say. The Gulf of Mexico plays a large role in our weather here, and it will give up a lot of heat in the cold times. Should moderate our land temperature somewhat, so maybe we won't see it go much below zero. The more continental interior parts of the country are going to see it really plunge. From about North Georgia up, it's going to get cold and stay cold for a long time. He took a bit of his cornbread so the rest of the table digested what he told them. Lisa asked, Is this going to lower the global temperature? Could it cause an ice age? Anne spoke up and said, They don't know. The question was raised several times during the teleconference, but what they really said was, We don't know. They do think next year will be colder than this year was before the impact, but no one is sure if it will correct itself the year following or if it will self-perpetuate. Some of the data they found is showing similarities to little ice ages that happened in the Renaissance period, which didn't end until the mid-19th century. Well, John said, it's for sure the impact did put thousands of megatons of water into the atmosphere. We've got 6 feet of rain here before the clouds broke for the first time, and I'd be willing to bet the higher elevations got their share of it as well. I don't know how moisture travels across the poles, but a lot of it may have fallen as snow there too. I really don't know much about how these things work, but I wouldn't think the impact by itself could lower the ocean level significantly, but if it was the genesis of some sort of self-perpetuating cycle, it could cause so much water to be taken up into polar ice and glaciers that sea level drops. During the last ice age, the width of the Florida peninsula was more than twice as wide as it is now. Open bodies of water would be fewer and the climate cooler and drier. More than a year or two of that and the grain belt is going to overrun the cotton belt. Anne looked at her husband and asked, "How do you know that? Is it in one of your books?" He shook his head. "No. As a matter of fact, I had a long talk with an archaeologist from the university specializing in Florida archaeology. Do you remember when we took Mel to that nap-in at Payne's Prairie last year where all those flint knappers were? He was the one with the display of mastodon and saber-toothed tiger bones. Of course, some of what he said was only conjecture, but he thinks it would be pretty close. This would have been during the height of the Ice Age when most of the northern third of the U.S. was under the ice sheet. He said the Earth went through several periods where it cooled or warmed, causing the ice sheets to retreat or advance. During the warming periods, the ice withdrew and tremendous amounts of cold water flowed down the Mississippi into the Gulf of Mexico. Eventually, there would be so much cold water flowing south that it stopped the Gulf Stream. Overall temperatures would begin to drop again, the ice would build up, less cold water flowed down south, and the Gulf Stream would restart. There's so much to that cycle they're not sure of, but he was pretty sure when enough cold melt water ran off the ice sheets, it would stop the Gulf Stream." Lisa looked mildly alarmed at this. "But what causes that cycle to stop?" John looked at Dr. Martin and Adam. He shrugged. "I don't know. They're not sure what caused the last one to stop."